And welcome back to the Casual GM Podcast. I am your host, Drew, and I am joined as always by my co-host, Mike. Mike, how are you?
Just as handsome as ever, Drew. About yourself?
Well, we're finally ramping up into my favorite part of the football season, the off season. We only have to get through the Super Bowl this weekend, and then we can go on to the important things about football, like the combine and free agency. And we're going to talk a little bit about that kind of stuff here today.
Yeah, and then the draft.
Oh, God, the Mecca. All of my favorite things in one weekend.
Yeah, that'll be great. We do quick shout-outs for our new subs. We took a while going from 40 to 50, and with a big push from our friends in the that have been watching for the whole time. We hit that mark, and then we jumped from 50 to 60 in like a week. So
the ball's really rolling.
That's great. So welcome, Kurt Romero. He popped in as a new sub. A lot of people aren't listing their profiles, so I'm not sure who they are, but we thank them as well.
Yeah, that's always really appreciated. So glad to have them on in the community, as it were. Let's talk NFL, because today's kind of our quarterback deep dive, right? But before that, we do kind of have some news and notes around the NFL. What do we got, Drew? So I think the first thing, let's keep it close to home to start. So the Arizona Cardinals, I believe, revealed that they are no longer interested in a number of coaching candidates, including Aaron Glenn. So that basically brings the only head coaching opportunity for him down to the Indianapolis Colts. Hey, Joey.
What's up, Joey? Thanks for joining.
So I doubt that he's going to get that job. The longer that I'm aware of who Jim Irsay is, the more I think that he's insane. And he's operating on a set of criteria that is known only to Jim Irsay. So I don't think that I'm gonna be able to predict what he's going to do. I will say, if Aaron Glenn were to get that job, he would deserve it, and I would love to get a couple third-round comp picks for him. So that would be fantastic. So probably going to happen at some point.
And Minnesota picked up a pretty solid coach too.
They hired Brian Flores from Pittsburgh to be their new defensive coordinator, and I'm not thrilled with him being in the division. I want our division rivals more than any teams in the NFL to make poor decisions, and hiring Brian Flores to be your defensive coordinator is a smart decision, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a bummer. I was a little surprised that he didn't get more head coaching interviews. He's the only problem with him in Miami was that Stephen Ross, their owner, was basically forcing him to play Tua when he wanted to play Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Yeah.
And I don't know that you should fault the guy for that. They were in the playoff hunt, so but he lost. When you go up against an owner in a power struggle, you're not likely to win those power struggles.
Yeah.
So.
Chase the money, right?
Yeah. So, and then the Lions made a couple of hires for their coaching staff. Deuce Staley left.
What's up, Funky?
There he is. And then Deuce Staley left, and then now his job has been hired. They've hired in Scotty Montgomery, who I had not previously been aware of, but he was, I believe, the running backs coach in Indianapolis and helped Jonathan Taylor. And now he's going to be in Detroit helping our running back. So I wish the Lions were on Hard Knocks every year so that I could get to know these guys a little bit better.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, it would be awesome. And then they also hired former Lion Dre Bly to be the defensive backs coach. So
yeah, little seen some of the social media posts on the Dre Bly signing. Welcome back, a Lions legend. I'm like, let's not go overboard on the legend thing. He was a good cornerback for us, and hit the Pro Bowl a few times. Like, he was solid, but I wouldn't put him in legend status. When I think of legend, I think of, Barry, Calvin, Stafford, Hanson, Eddie Murray, like those are legends. Dre Bly, he was a very good player. Oh, shut up, Asics. And welcome.
Oh, there you go. So, so I think that covers kind of what's going on, like coaching hire wise. The Pro Bowl, or as I like to call it, professional recess, took place. I watched the kick-tack-toe competition, to my everlasting shame, and I watched the quarterback accuracy competition, which played out almost exactly how I felt it should. So, so like the other day, I was having a conversation with somebody, and they were like, well, this guy's a Pro Bowler. And I'm like, you're saying that like it's some huge accolade,
right?
Like Tyler Huntley is a Pro Bowler this year.
I was just going to say,
like if there was any shine, I mean, like, so the Pro Bowl matters for a couple of reasons. One is like guys on rookie contracts who are first ballot Pro Bowl selections, so non-alternates. If you pick up their first year option, their option goes up if you make one Pro Bowl, if you make two Pro Bowls, or if you make the Pro Bowl or the All Pro team. So, not looking forward. I mean, like Penei Sewell's the guy right now that I'm like, you're right there, like, you're right there where, if we pick up your option, which they're going to, there's no doubt.
Yeah.
If you make a Pro Bowl as a first ballot guy, it's just going to be a couple million more, in cost or whatever. And what I like Penei Sewell, I'm not asking him to not play at a Pro Bowl level, but I just don't want to pay him more than what you could pay him for his services. So call me cheap or whatever, but I'm pretty cheap.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's how you can build the rest of your team.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So, and so like A6 hits a topic here that we were talking about before the show. A6 says it's going to be expensive, and like that's the thing that I don't know. I guess I'm going to go through it, this kind of experiment with this team and how they're building. But you and I were just talking, like, you can't re-sign everybody.
Yeah.
Even if it's not to like top of the market deals, you just can't re-sign everybody. Like if they re-sign Jamal Williams and DJ Chark, and the next season it's Jonah Jackson and whomever else, like that all adds up. And then at some point when you have guys like Penei Sewell and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Aiden Hutchinson and whomever else, and some of those guys demand top shelf money, like Sewell is probably going to do. At some point, I would rather lose someone like a Jonah Jackson than someone else. Now, you're probably going to, what's going to end up happening is you're going to make up the difference on the back end of your roster, right?
Yeah.
But I just, the Lions were without depth for so long that I don't want them to go back to those days.
Yeah, that's tough. It's kind of, as you were talking there, I was checking out the chat. Man, Joey, that sucks. I hope everything goes well, and hope you're feeling better now, and things are on the recovery train here.
Yeah.
So that's more important than football.
And he found a way to join us the show today.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Crazy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, fans are fans, Drew.
That's true.
Not of the show, but of football. We just happen to be,
we are
part
one
of
small
the football community and Alliance community, right?
Indeed. So that's basically what's going on around the NFL. And we had 4 guys go to the Pro Bowl. Khalif Raymond was a first ballot Pro Bowler this year, and then Sewell, Goff, and St. Brown were all alternates. And it looks like they had a good time based upon their Twitter accounts or what have you. So glad they had a good time.
Like a free trip to Hawaii to just
it's
play games, right?
I've been to Hawaii once. I mean, it is the most beautiful place I've ever been. hands down.
Yeah,
it's great.
I have not been. I'm hoping to go there at some point. I probably won't get picked to go play in the Pro Bowl. But then again, the way they're handing it out, I might have a shot. It's a non-0% chance, right?
All you got to do is be on a roster, Mike, and let's be honest, you've got a real chance at that. So, yeah. So, yeah, it is. I was there in January. I don't know how many years ago now. And it was just 80 with zero humidity. And there's like amazing flowers and there's golf courses everywhere. And the locals hate your guts. And it's obvious that they hate you. Yeah. But I
wouldn't want to share that either.
It is the most like tranquil, beautiful place I've ever been. I can't imagine anything else really topping it.
Yeah.
So I would recommend, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of travel at my age, but I would recommend that you go. I mean, I've been a lot of places. I just don't want to continue to go to places. Going places is the worst. But I would go back to Hawaii in an instant if I could.
Yeah, that sounds like heaven.
Yeah, it's really nice. So,
anything else around the NHL? Good Lord. I got hockey on the brain somehow
today. Your real loyalties are popping out there. Yeah,
I know.
So
anything else around the NFL before we pop over to our position group?
No, just Aaron Rodgers nonsense. I don't really want to talk about it. So
speaking of quarterbacks,
Jesus. Ridiculous moron. So.
Well, that's right. He won't see this because he's going to be spending 4 days in a dark room with, I don't know, apparently no windows and no food. I don't know. He just wants us to talk about him.
Yeah, he does. So, third host of the Pat McAfee show. But yeah, we're here today to kind of do our deep dive on our last position group. We're going to do a deep dive on the quarterback position. And thankfully, outside of fullback, this has the fewest people for us to talk about on the Lions roster. So first things first, let's kind of get the easy stuff out of the way. Nate Sudfeld was the backup quarterback this year. Did a great job because Goff didn't miss any time, I don't believe. I think he threw a pass or two near the end of the season or handed the ball off in the last game or whatever, but certainly didn't play a critical role. Exactly what you want out of your backup, right? So I guess the question with backup quarterback is, do you re-sign another guy like Sudfeld, or do you go to the draft and spend a mid to late round pick on a guy that you have under contract for like 4 years for roughly the same amount of money?
Or the number 6 pick.
So I was going to talk about that scenario when we get to the main guy himself.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically, right? So like that's also in play here because I can't imagine there's many scenarios that would prevent the Lions from heading into next season with Jared Goff as the starting quarterback week 1.
Oh, prevent them?
Yeah, I think that almost regardless of what is likely to happen, week 1, Jared Goff's your starting quarterback.
Yep. I agree.
90%.
There's been a question going around the socials about like, how close are the Lions to a Super Bowl contention?
That's such a ridiculous question.
And the answer is, to me, an elite quarterback and at least 2 top-tier defenders. 1 on the line, 1 at cornerback. If we can get those 3, I think we're Super Bowl contenders.
So I remember I answered that question, and it's not a complete answer, but I'm like, we're a quarterback on a rookie contract away.
Yeah.
So since this CBA went into effect in 2011, half of the quarterbacks that have started in the Super Bowl, I believe, are like, and like that's a little bit weird because like Carson Wentz played 12 or 13 games, but then Nick Foles got him the rest of the way a couple of years ago against the Patriots. But like those teams were constructed around a quarterback on a rookie deal. It's not necessarily a point that you can argue against anymore. It's not like 2 veterans are going to go duke it out. Like this year we have Patrick Mahomes on his well-deserved contract extension and Jalen Hurts, who was a 2nd-round pick, who they are paying $1.6 million this year. If you want to make a Super Bowl, one thing that teams should look at is getting a competent quarterback on a rookie contract. So, like, I'm not out here saying Jalen Hurts is blowing up the NFL with what they're asking him to do. But when you can pay Jalen Hurts to do what he does for $1.6 million, you get options. Like, you can go out and trade for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and you can sign Avery Bradley, and then you can pick up, like, you can trade for, who was the guy from the Bears? Robert Quinn.
Roquan Smith?
No, not Roquan Smith. No. They traded for Robert Quinn from the Bears, and then they signed Ndamukong Suh and another guy late in the season as backups. You know, like, you have the flexibility in your cap to do all these other, like, roster moves to, like, gear up, you know, to make a push, you know, or what have you.
All that is true, but I find the interesting thing is, and they did a lot of that, but I think they did a lot of that on defense. Because if you look at their starting roster for the Super Bowl on offense, 10 of their 11 were draft picks.
Yeah.
Which is great. Now, granted, some of those are like, are not all of these guys are on first contracts, right? Like Kelsey. He's coming at the end of his career, right? And he's high paid. He's not on his rookie draft pick. But I do love the fact that they built this team, at least the offense, through the draft. And having that quarterback on a rookie deal helps you in other areas of their game. And to me, that screamed out the defensive side of the ball.
You know, and the one guy is that bottom one, Lane Johnson?
Johnson, yeah.
Yeah.
The tackle, right tackle.
You know, he's playing with a torn muscle or whatever, ligament or something in his core, and he's just toughing it out. And I'm just like, that sucks.
I mean, it's no broken throat, but whatever.
I mean, I've torn my bicep before. I can't imagine going out and playing any kind of sport with a torn ligament. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But this is the reason why drafting matters. Like, this is why, because, like, these guys, they are paying less. I don't think Goddard's on his extension yet. They developed Mailata. Like, they have a guy, Andre Goddard. I'll look it up on.
Not the tight end Goddard, right?
No, he's like a backup tackle.
Gotcha. And these are just the starters.
Yeah, but, like, they drafted him pretty high to be their tackle. Then they, like, took a flyer on Mailata, and Mailata came out of nowhere like a rocket.
Yeah.
And took the job away from him. I cannot believe I cannot find this. Give me a second. I'll go to PFF.
Anywho, so do we want to keep going on the backup piece, or do we want to move on to?
Well, I mean, starter? Like, what would you do? Like, what would you do? I know what I would do for my backup quarterback. I would just sign a guy for $1 million, like, each year.
I mean, I don't know. So when you think about the quarterback position, we've got a guy that, I'm going to say it right now, he's mediocre. We'll talk about why that's the case, even though he's got a couple top 5 stats. I get that. He's mediocre. I don't think he's a guy that's going to bring you to the Super Bowl. He may go to the Super Bowl with a team that brings him along, like that he did in LA, but I don't think he's going to bring you to a Super Bowl. And the problem is, next year we should be better, which means we're going to have a worse draft pick, which means we're going to be further away from those top picks where you can get a franchise quarterback. So now you're either stuck with a mediocre guy that is probably just not a guy that can take you there, or you have to do what was it the Bears? Didn't they trade up big time for Trubisky? Weren't they in the 20s and they traded up to like 3 to grab
they
him?
were at 3.
Well, yeah, but they traded up there, right?
To 2.
Yeah, okay. Well, there was another one.
To.
I don't remember which team it was, but they traded up like 20 spots to go grab a quarterback. It didn't end up working out. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to give up draft assets to go find the quarterback. I want to use my own. The problem is, when we're going to be drafting in the 20s, it's a lot harder to find that franchise quarterback. So
I guess that's the long way of saying I would draft one now, and I wouldn't necessarily ignore the 6th overall pick, depending on who falls to me.
Right. So we're going to do a mock draft here a little bit later where we're going to see if that situation pops up. But let's just kind of discuss that right now, because you and I differ on if this guy's there, what would you do? Right. So like, let's just kind of do like a little theoretical mock draft to pick 6 here.
Right.
I think Chicago is going to trade out of the number 1 overall spot. I think the spot that makes the most sense for them to trade with are the Colts at 4. The Colts get to jump the Texans, so they get their first pick at whatever quarterback they want, and Chicago doesn't fall out of the top tier of talent in the NFL draft and they get their pick of Will Anderson or Jalen Carter. So I think that's best case scenario for both teams. So if the draft goes, so I think that the Colts would trade up for Will Levis, even though I think Bryce Young's better. So let's just say Bryce Young to kind of be as consensus as possible.
You think they trade up to number 1 to get Will Levis
from 4? Yeah. So the reason why is that Chris Ballard, the Colts GM, is all about traits, and if there's no quarterback in this class with better traits, probably than Will Levis. You could have a debate about Anthony Richardson.
Yeah.
But anyways, so like so let's say it goes Bryce Young or Will Levis or Bryce Young, and then the other guy, the other one that didn't get taken at number 2. Arizona goes Will Anderson, Chicago goes Jalen Carter. You've got Seattle at 5. Let's say they take a defensive player, Tyree Wilson or Brian Breesy or somebody. And then Detroit's there. And either someone like a CJ Stroud or a Will Levis is there at 6. So you and I differ about what you would do depending on the player.
Right.
I think that if Will Levis was there, you should draft Will Levis. And if CJ Stroud was there, I would not draft CJ Stroud at 6.
Right.
You, I think, have a slightly different opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably go with Stroud there if he falls. I think we're at that talent pool on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, that's where we need to focus is defense for the most part. But I think we dropped off of that top tier. Like we have 2 really great players in Carter and Will Anderson. Everybody after that is a distinct drop back. So if I'm going to drop back anyway, I would probably just rather start taking my defense at 18 instead of 6 and get somebody that I could potentially have as a franchise quarterback long term without having to trade up in future years to try to grab that franchise quarterback. So if Stroud is there, I would probably take him. If Will Levis is there, I would probably take him. And the thing is, one of those guys is probably going to be there. So like I would still take a quarterback at 6.
So Funky says the franchise guy did a mock and had the Lions take AR-15 and his guard Osiris Torrance, who I love.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to have Osiris Torrance take over Vitae's spot at right guard. That is, you could move buildings with those 2 guys. So, but I don't know who the franchise guy is, Funky. Can you tell me who that person is? Because I would like to look at that. I also don't agree with it. So, like, you could make a case that Anthony Richardson has the highest upside of any QB in this draft class. And if he's there at 18, I would consider it, but I would not consider him at 6.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider him at 6. If one of those other if all 3 of those quarterbacks are gone, Levis, Stroud, and Young, then I would draft defense at 6 and see if we can grab Richardson at 18. And even if he's at that, I don't remember who's just in front of us in the 15-16 range, but if he's still there at 15-16 and it looks like one of those teams are going to be quarterback needy, I would move up 3 spots or whatever to do that. Similar to what we did with Jamison Williams.
You are killing me. So
I know. Like I normally don't like trading up, but I would do it for a couple spots.
So one exercise that I've been going through recently is I'm looking at all the draft day trades each year dating back to the beginning of this CBA in 2011. I've only done 3 years so far, the most recent ones, 22, 21, and 20. And what I have found is that if you are going to trade up, you are paying through the nose almost all the time, unless you are outside of the top 15. And even then, it's kind of a crapshoot as to like whether or not you're going to hit on a player. I just see, unless you're going to trade up to like 1 for like a very specific player, I don't believe trading up helps the franchise.
Yeah.
So to speak. Like now I'm going to probably be bombarded by examples. Like, what about Julio Jones? What about this? Like,
yeah,
that's when you hit on a guy. Like you saw something in a guy.
What about Eric Ebron? Oh,
right.
Shit.
Exactly. You know, so like, like one mock that I saw today had the Lions going Peter Skoronski at 6 to play guard, and then taking Michael Mayer from Notre Dame at 18 to play tight end. And I was like, wow, I cannot come up with a worse scenario for investment of premium draft capital than what that is.
Yeah.
You know, so that just shows you what the kind of split is on people and how they approach the draft. Like you could very easily say like, oh, Skoronski and Mayer at those spots, that's the best player available, right?
Yeah. Oh my God! Stop using that term.
I know
You're using the term wrong, Drew.
I know.
That's
And
not
I did
the
it
way
on purpose.
it's supposed to be meant.
So let's talk about let's talk about the number 6 pick, because I do believe that Funky in the chat here has said something like, what if Seattle went CB, have Woolen and Witherspoon back there? Just saying. That makes a lot of sense to me. And like in the last 2 drafts, corners have gone in the top 10 and a couple of times in the top 5. So like last year we had Gardner and Stingley. The year before that, I think that we also had 2 corners go pretty high. I can't remember who they were. And then the year before that, Okuda went 3.
Yep.
I believe. So, oh, thank you, man. Appreciate it. He says I shared it on your last video. So I don't think there's any stigma attached to a team, especially like Seattle, sitting at 5, going first corner off the board. I don't think anybody's going to be like, oh, they're really overpaying for that position. No.
Right.
And like pairing Woolen with a guy like Devin Witherspoon, I think makes a lot of sense. You know, that could very easily happen. And that would be the absolute, probably the worst case scenario for Detroit. If it goes Levis, Young, Anderson, Witherspoon, Carter, and it's like, can we convince a team to trade up for the 3rd quarterback off the board? Because you literally just took everyone that we could have considered at 6. Like the 6 is looking like the absolute, like I hate the fact that we're at 6.
It's taking your sister to the prom.
Pretty much. Man,
well,
it's
let's do this. Let's switch over to the Goff conversation with our deep dive.
Sure.
I've got stats, but I don't know if you want me to kind of go through those right now, or if you wanted to start.
Well,
and then we'll kind of talk about like, why is Goff a mediocre quarterback, even though he made the Pro Bowl and was top 5 in yards.
So where I want to start talking about Jared Goff is his contract, right? So like, once again, prefacing this conversation, I'm going to say I don't have anything against Jared Goff as a human being or as a football player, really. Like, he's not terrible. He seems like a super nice guy. He seems like a guy I would want to have on the team. It's just that he happens to fit the Venn diagram of what I don't want the position to be in the modern NFL. And that's a relatively immobile, game managing quarterback that's oh, good, you've got it up. Can you make it bigger, please? Thank you. Game managing quarterback that is on a second contract. So if you look, so going into next season, his cap hit is effectively $31 million. And then in 2024, the last year of his deal, he'll be effectively $32 million. And the Lions will have the joy of paying him his entire extension. Hooray. So, like, I want to talk about what the Rams did for a quick second, because it's also what Baltimore is currently facing with their quarterback situation.
Okay. I'll allow it.
The Rams traded up quite heavily, 5 picks, I believe, to move from 15 to 1 in Jared. I think that was the 2016 draft, to draft Jared Goff number 1 overall. In his time in LA, they got his absolute best season, where he took him to the Super Bowl.
He went to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, he went to the Super Bowl. And since then, he has not reached that height again. And I think that if you look at his career, he settled into kind of a niche where, like, this last season shows us who he is as a quarterback. Like, he's never going to be in the elite tier of quarterbacks in the NFL, but at his best, which I think he was this last season, he's going to be he can be just outside that group. So 84 in 2018, that's his best season. And if you look right before that, he was a 75, a 72, a 71. In this last season, he was a 72 again. Like, that's his sweet spot, is like, he is a starting caliber to slightly better than a starting caliber quarterback in the NFL. I don't feel that's worth $30 million a year. Okay. I think that Detroit and their fans have been so starved for winning that detail that I just said is completely ignored, because we won. He's on the team. He's the quarterback. He's going to get credit to some amount.
Yeah. Credit, blame, whether it's your fault or your claim. Right?
Disproportionate amount of both of those things, right?
Yep.
Okay. If we look at the NFL, teams are not winning with quarterbacks like Jared Goff at the highest levels. It is quarterbacks like Jalen Hurts and Joe Burrow on rookie deals, or it is elite quarterbacks on contract extensions like Patrick Mahomes. So, and to be honest, Patrick Mahomes is so much better than everybody else that I don't know that it's like he's onto a tier unto himself. So I don't know that you can put him in with other quarterbacks. But
I think there's a very distinct top 3.
Yes. So, and like, Joe Burrow is going to get paid.
Dr. Detroit, welcome. Here we go.
Josh Allen is going to get paid. But Baltimore, here's what LA did. LA spent all that draft capital to move up and take Jared Goff. They got to a Super Bowl. They gave him a contract extension, and before they paid him a single dollar of it, they traded him to Detroit. Baltimore it's just the opposite. Baltimore traded up to number 32 to take Lamar Jackson. And now they are about $100 million in guaranteed money apart on what his second contract is going to look like.
That was kind of like me and my contract negotiation at work. We were about $100 million apart. I wanted 100.1, and they were.
Yeah. This is how we got Brad Gnomes to be on our show, right? We had to buckle.
Yeah.
we caved into his demands. And so, like, if Baltimore wants to retain Lamar Jackson, they're probably going to have to give him exactly what he wants, right? So, however, what if Baltimore says, we had 5 years of Lamar Jackson on a rookie deal, we can trade him for an absolute haul of draft capital and not be stuck on that contract. And then maybe they bring in someone like Derek Carr, or I don't know, maybe they sign Andy Dalton for a year or whatever. And they get this additional draft capital. They're able to remain good, and now they're in the hunt for another quarterback, right? why isn't that a realistic option for teams like Baltimore? LA did it, and they won a Super Bowl the next year.
I think they certainly could.
Right. So this is my point, is that like I don't think there is enough turnover at the quarterback position in the NFL, because what you're going to get is like Lamar Jackson may be capable of taking a team into a deep playoff run, possibly winning a Super Bowl.
Right.
But he has to go up. He is in a division. He is in a conference with Joe fucking Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Justin Herbert. And like, I'm a Lamar Jackson guy. Like, I'm a fan of Baltimore. And like, I don't think, like, I would probably bet on all those other guys first.
Yeah.
You know, so like, unless Baltimore can go out and find an equal to better option at quarterback, which is a big ask. Like,
sure,
should they commit to him, Lamar Jackson? So
I'd franchise him, see how it goes.
That's absolutely going to happen.
Yeah,
they are absolutely franchising him. There's no reason they shouldn't. $45 million, but like, that's going to happen. So bringing this back to Detroit and what Detroit should do, we're not paying the Mahomes, Allen, soon to be Burrow, soon to be Lamar Jackson money, but it's still enough money where they can't go out into free agency and simply bring in a ton of guys to just go out and compete, right?
Yeah. Fill the deficiencies.
Right. But what that money could represent is like a very easy time re-signing the players that they have already drafted. And if that's the direction they want to go, they are going to have to move on from Goff at some point. So the question is not, should they move on from Goff? It's only a matter of when they should do it.
When.
And I don't think there's any chance it's this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably accurate. As much as I would like it to be this offseason, Brad Holmes, he's right when he said it's a lot easier to get worse at quarterback than better, right? He's not wrong at all. So if you've got a guy that is mediocre to capable, not elite or great, but like capable of running an offense, capable of managing the games, capable of winning when the rest of the team helps pull him along. I mean, that's what we've got. And I mean, you can keep that because if you can get the rest of the team good enough where it can pull them along, you might as well do that. Because you can get worse. And then all of a sudden you got a guy that can't even win when the team pulls him along. Right. So I'd rather have that kind of guy than the opposite.
Yeah. So my thing is, I appreciate what Jared Goff has done for this team, and but I would trade him in with my next breath. I mean, like, it's not a question to me whatsoever. Like, the best asset in professional football to have is a competent quarterback on a rookie deal, bar none. There's nothing else that comes close. The only other thing that you can do that is slightly representative of that asset is to continue to invest draft capital into the 5 premium positions so that you have those guys on the roster. A, they're on the roster. B, you're paying them less than you would on a second contract if you had to go out into the market and get them.
Yep.
So thank you, Dr. Detroit. I get a little worked up about this shit. Yeah. And I will say, I noticed this. I'm sure Mike, having been my friend now for, what has it been, Mike? 5 years?
It's been years. Probably 4 or 5 years.
That's got to be.
Yeah.
But like, when I start talking, like when I get worked up about something, I always sound mad. You know, like, I'm not mad about this, but like,
just passionate. You're passionate, Drew.
I get a little passionate about it.
So let's do this. Let's move into because I know we're trying to keep it right around that hour. We may go a little bit long if we need to, but like, let's start going into the deep dive on Goff and why, even though he was top 5 in a couple important categories, he was still the 20th best or highest graded PFF.
Sure.
So let's do that. I am going to do that there. I'm going to turn that banner down a little bit. Bloop. Can you see that okay?
Yeah, that's pretty good, actually.
All right. So the things that I wanted to kind of point out to start is let's take a look at Jared Goff versus actual elite quarterbacks. So sure. Mahomes, Allen, and Burrow. They are in a different order. Allen, Mahomes, Burrow, they are 1, 2, 3, according to PFF in the NFL. Their overall grades in the 90s. That is elite. That's best of the best. Goff was 72.4. His passing was 71.6. His running was only 53, which is not great. So those are the kind of things that is why his overall is middle of the pack. His overall essentially is 20th, the 20th highest graded. And then you start looking at the actual individual information around that, right? So what about under pressure? Well, the elite guys are the best under pressure, the third best and the fourth best. Jared Goff is a 41.2. Now, granted, most of these guys are, even the best ones are in the 60s and above, right? They're not back in the 90s, but Goff is at a 41.2. It's terrible. He's at 16, so he's right in the middle. He is a middle of the road. And what I did is I highlighted the red ones for if you're middle of the pack or worse.
Sure.
So he is middle of the pack under pressure. He had 0 games graded in the 90s. He had 3 in the 80s, 4 in the 70s, 3 in the 60s. A lot of those middle ones, like the 70s and 60s, he looks the same as Burrow and Mahomes and Allen. The 70s, a little bit less, but you're looking at 7, 7, and 5 in the 80s and 90s for the other 3. Yeah. He had 3, right? And none of them in the 90s. And then you look at he had 3 of them under 50. Elite quarterbacks don't have games under 50, right?
So like when I look at those stats, what I think is like the other quarterbacks, the elite quarterbacks, like their floor is higher, right? You hear this term all the time, right? So like they have a high floor, like they're just not going to have their performance like fluctuate terribly, right? So
yeah, I mean, and their ceiling's higher, right? That differential is just an entire notch up. They've got a much higher ceiling. When you look at their floor, you're looking at the mids, and actually several of these guys were like 68 and 69s, but hey, they're still 60s, so I put them there. But like you're looking at, high 60s, low 70s as their floor, where his floor is sub 50 and his ceiling is 80s. So those are just the grades, right? So let's take a look at some of the metrics and stats. So scroll over. Yards, he was the 6th. He had the 6th most, 4,400 yards. Hey, that's great. That's one of the things that everybody talks about, right? Is he was in the top 6 in yards. He was in the top 5 in touchdowns. I love it. I love having my quarterbacks in the top 5, top 6. He only had 7 INTs. He was top 4 for the least amount. I love my quarterback doing that as well. But let's take a look at outside of those 3 things, which are the talking points. Why are they the talking points? Because they're the only good ones, right? His completion percentage, he is 20th in the league, bottom half. His big time throw percentage is 2.9%, 32nd in the league. His turnover worthy plays is 3.6, 18th. Now, granted, Josh Allen was 21st. He had a higher turnover worthy play. But when you look at him at the big time throws, he's number 1.
Right.
And the differential between the number of big time throws and the number of turnover worthy plays, I'd much rather have a plus 19 in Josh Allen, even if his turnover worthy plays is a little bit higher because he has so many big time throws. And to me, when you look at 18, 19, 20 in those top 3, Goff is a -6. He has more turnover worthy plays than he has big time plays.
Hi, Crimson.
It's up, Grim. That is why
when people are, well, he's got these 3 stats that are important and good. Why is he ranked at number 20? Well, this is like that in a nutshell. His -6 big time versus turnover worthy is a big piece of that. So then as I was looking at that, it's not fair to just go, hey, look at Goff compared to Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and Joe Burrow. 3 of the best quarterbacks in the entire NFL. Mm-hmm. So then I started going, all right, well, let's take a look at some other quarterbacks that are closer to him. So let me do this. Bloop,
bloop, bloop. I love the sound effects are a part of our game here.
Yeah. Did you like that? It was a slightly different tone for each one.
I loved it.
Good. Chat, let me know. Was I good on the bloops?
Don't actually let them know.
Yeah, don't let me know. So he's at 20, right? And we've got 3 other quarterbacks. We will figure out who they are later. That 13th, 14th, and 17th. And we can look at their grades. They're obviously higher because they're higher graded. All of them are better runners. One of them is only slightly better, but still better. Under pressure, they're all better than he is. We've got the grades are consistently better, which granted goes into why their overall was better. And we look at the other comparisons. We already know Goff did great there in these 2. But the turnover or the completion percentage, some of these guys are ahead of him or right around him. So these are the comps, right?
Yep.
Looking at the big time plays, you got some guys just ahead of him with far more big time plays and a much better turnover or a big time play to turnover worthy potential.
Okay.
So who, I will ask the chat or Drew, who do we think are the 3 guys, the top 2 guys are 13th and 14th. Of course, if you look up here, it's already up there. I fail at life.
Kirk Cousins.
Yeah. So Kirk Cousins. Yes. So Kirk Cousins, Aaron Rodgers are both. I've heard so many times that, well, Jared Goff is the 2nd best quarterback in the division. And I'm like, he's 3rd at best right now.
To be fair, I would want any of the other quarterbacks.
Yeah, I would want any of the other ones. I would want Rodgers, Cousins, and Fields.
Yeah.
So who's the guy that's closest to Jared Goff with all of this stuff? Daniel Jones.
Boom.
That's who Jared Goff is, right?
Less mobile Daniel Jones.
He is a less mobile Daniel Jones. Yeah, that's the thing that bumps him up. But even his passing is basically the same as Jared Goff. He's better under pressure by far. He's got a higher his floor isn't as consistently as low. Now granted, he only had 3,200 yards, 15 touchdowns. They also had a great running game, so that also helps. So when I take a look at Jared Goff, what I see is someone who is very much a 20th ranked player, regardless of the 3 stats. So outside of those measurables, I also took a look at some of the other PFF grades and where he ranks compared to the rest of the league. He was killing it on play action. He was 3rd best overall. He had a 90.5 grade. All others, he was the 29th. Right. What that tells me is we need to do that all the time.
Can they? I mean, so here's what I take away from it. Can they do anything else?
No, they can't.
Right. They're stuck.
But the problem is if everything's a play action, nothing is.
Yeah.
So you have to have a whole bunch of plays that are going to end up sucking to make the other ones more good.
Now, I think the saving grace there is that Ben Johnson is like a savant when it comes to play action and running the football.
Yeah. Yep. His grade under pressure was 30th in the league. His deep passing was right in the middle at 14. He was right in the middle, outside of the top 10 anyway, for time to throw. And one of the things I found really interesting was on the quicker throws, he was actually 10th overall with an 80.3 grade. But on anything where the play had to develop, he was god awful.
He was a 31st graded quarterback on longer
developing
plays. And just, I mean, when you look at all the red being middle of the pack or worse, he's tied for 15th in big time throws with greats such as Jacoby Brissett, Kenny Pickett, and Dak and Tua. Like, he was 32nd in big time throw percentage. His average depth of target was 30th. I know there's a shocker. Right. His turnover worthy, he was the third most. Big time throws under pressure, he was terrible at it. He was Wentz, Garoppolo, and Darnold under pressure.
See, that's the thing. Like, he has always felt like a different version of Carson Wentz to me.
Yeah. And the yards per attempt under pressure was not surprisingly in that same area. He was Mills, Garoppolo, and Heineke. I mean, those are his comps. That's why I was like, I would take CJ Stroud at 6, because I think almost all of these with Stroud, not only do you get a better cap hit, I think almost all of these go up. They almost have to.
Well, so not shockingly, the reason why I'm off Stroud is that his comp in the NFL is Jared Goff. And like, I really don't have a problem with CJ Stroud outside of a couple of things. Number one, he's bad under pressure. And number two, he just, for whatever reason, outside of the college football playoff game against Georgia, refuses to use his legs to get him outside of structure.
Yeah.
Which he showed that he can do against the best defense in college football.
Yeah.
So like, mea culpa or whatever, but like, I just can't get
like 6 of one, half a dozen of there.
Yeah,
I get that. Do you want to spend a number 6 pick to get the same guy that you already have?
So the saving grace there is that you're probably saving $20 million,
right? Or more, 25
could be. Yeah. So like, it depends. What are you going to use the $25 million on?
Yeah. Well, so one of the things that with Goff, what I wanted to do was, we started out 1-6, right? And then we essentially went 8-2 over the last 10. So
8 over last 10 is what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I wanted to see how some of these stats are in the beginning versus the end, right? Did the beginning just bury him, or is this just who he is? So I did the same thing on a per game. So I took a look at, and I've got all the reds highlighted as losses. All the greens are the wins. And I looked at his passing grade for each of those games. And I also grabbed like the yards. He averaged 261 yards per game. His yards per attempt, total touchdowns, interceptions, and then the big time throws and turnover worthy plays. Average depth of target and time to throw. And the things that I found interesting were in the average depth of target was longer in losses, and they were 22% shorter in our wins.
You got to throw to make up the catch back up.
I don't think that's it. I think it is, he was so bad on the longer throws, they dialed the playbook back, which is also why you start seeing the average depth of target shrink, is because you're not throwing those longer plays. That's kind of my thought, is they kind of dumbed down the playbook a little bit, made it shorter. When you take a look at the time to throw, and granted this is pretty close here, but when you look at his grade on the time to throw, those longer developing plays, he was horrible at. And I think Ben Johnson, the genius that he was last year, recognized that and said, you know what? We need to do things quicker where you were actually good. Yeah. So they dumbed that playbook down, which also made the throws quicker and shorter. He had less decisions to make because that was clearly an issue with him both last year and the first 7 games of this year. I think that's probably what happened. Big time throws in our losses. He actually had more in our losses than he did wins.
Because he's got to make plays to catch up to try and win the game.
Or because they dumbed the playbook down.
No, Michael, big time throws. Come on. All right.
Well, the big time throws are throws over 20 yards, I believe.
Right. So they're pushing the ball downfield for some reason. What is the reason? If you're dumbing the playbook down, you're not. You're making things simpler, shorter, and quicker.
Right, but I think that's what we recognized during those losses was big time throws is not something he can do.
Well, I agree.
Right, so that's why I'm saying, like, I think
game.
they had to dumb that down. They weren't trying to necessarily come back and win, which we were a lot of those times. But I think what they realized was he's not good at it. We will have to try to come back and win a different way. That's kind of the way I read
man's opinion
from the games.
Exactly. So like when I take a look at it, I mean, so we have talked about these numbers off camera. What I take away from this is that like what makes Jared Goff good is predictable. What makes Jared Goff good is inside a relatively small box, right? Like you need to so you have to be able to run the ball effectively in order to set up play action, because what we've seen is Jared Goff can't do things like a Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes where you throw to set up the run. It has to be you run to set up the pass, right? Because you have to be able to trick those linebackers and taking a step towards the line of scrimmage to open up, those throwing lanes or those windows where he can complete things in the intermediate distance, but like when they committed to DJ Chark, and we'll see if they bring him back, and Jamison Williams this last offseason, what I think they said was, we want speed at these different positions.
Yep.
And if you cannot hit those kinds of wide receivers, either they're going nine routes down the field, or if they're heading some deep crosser and you're going to have to hit some timing pattern where you're putting the ball in front of them where they can use their speed to, make a big play, one of those big time throws, then he's not the guy.
Yeah.
So we only got a couple minutes left.
Yep.
Let's go.
I want to point out one thing I found super interesting.
All right.
In our wins, he was actually graded worse than in our losses. To me, that tells me the rest of the team had to do better for us to win than him. Right? Like,
yeah.
At least that was the way I read it. I guess I'm kind of curious what you think and what the chat thinks on why in our wins he was actually a worse performer.
Well, because I think that he wasn't required to do nearly as much. Is the thing. Like when I looked at this data the first time, and maybe this is that picture of like a duck that's also a rabbit or whatever, and it just depends on what you're looking at to see what picture you see.
Yeah.
But like I see a quarterback here that like when they were losing in losses, like I'm just so used to the Lions like being one possession away from, snatching defeat out of the jaws of victory, that like to me it says you had to take more chances, and just some of the time those are going to be better, and some of the time it's not on Jared Goff. Sometimes your wide receiver drops the ball or runs the wrong route or something that isn't his fault, but so he can still do something correctly and not get the result of that thing, and so like to me it says, hey, Jared Goff was doing his part, but they were asking more, so like you're artificially pumping up like the grade, but like something else, like there was a cumulative effect of things that let him down. Now you could go back and you could look at every game and you could find examples pro and con, right?
Yeah.
But what is it? So this is great stuff, Mike. We got to try and keep it to an hour. I want to do a little mock real quick.
Yeah, when I saw that, I was thinking that as a perfect example of your trailer or a truck.
Yeah, 100%. Right? Yeah, and so he is a trailer.
If you were a truck,
yeah,
your numbers would be higher in the wins because you're bringing the team with you.
Right.
If you're a trailer, you're just along for the ride and you can perform worse.
Mm-hmm. So while Mike is bringing up the simulator here, I want to.
I'm going to bring up the simulator. I can do that.
Sir.
Which one?
PFF. So Joey says it kind of feels wrong to want Goff gone after a nice season he just had. And I agree. And this sentiment, Joey, it sucks that you had a heart attack, BT Dubs. So, but like buy low, sell high. So when Jared Goff did something good and you can convince other teams, that he did something good, sell on that. Right? Goff, Don Burr says, Goff just isn't the long-term guy. I just want a replacement on my roster. Sort of, right? Sort of. That's a great way to end that sentence, I think, because it's like,
yeah,
I agree. And yet you could get worse at quarterback before you get better. Let's see. Go ahead and start it up when you're ready, Mike.
All right. We ready?
Okay.
We're not trading
Crimson
up?
says this QB draft is extremely boomer bust. No. Can you make this bigger, please?
I suppose.
That's good.
All right.
We're not trading up. We're going to see what happens at 6. All right, so let's scroll up and we'll see what happened here. So we go Jalen Carter. They didn't trade out. Will Levis goes. Miles Murphy. Okay, but I don't think that's the guy. Probably Will Anderson. Bryce Young. So I think that's pretty chalk, which is why we've moved to this simulator as opposed to Pro Football Network, because they were having Quentin Johnson go number 1. That's just crazy. Porter at 6. No, we're not going to draft Simpson at 18. Okay, so here's the scenario that I was thinking of. One of those 3 quarterbacks is on the board at 6. What do you do? So you can draft that guy, you can trade out of that spot, or you can draft a different player. Those are our 3 picks. Which of those 3 things do you feel offers the most value to the Detroit Lions?
I would take Stroud.
I would trade out.
I mean, yeah, I suppose I could. It depends on where. I don't want to trade outside of the top 10. So if who's next? If the Raiders, well, they won't probably, but if the Falcons, the Panthers, I don't see Philadelphia trading up. But like, I wouldn't want to trade outside of the top 10, maybe top 11.
Okay.
But I don't think Tennessee needs a quarterback. So,
well, they might. We don't know what they're going to do with Tannehill.
It's fair. I mean, if I could trade within the top 10, I would probably consider trading within the top 10.
Well, let's click.
And then I could go defense with that pick,
right,
18th and whatever else, right? But if I can't trade, I would take CJ Stroud.
Well, let's see what. So click on trade there in the middle, and let's see if we're getting somewhat. So 12th, would you trade back to 12?
It's outside of where I would want to go, but I would consider it.
Okay, so let's draft a player here then. Okay. So if you draft CJ Stroud, what I think is in my opinion, you are drafting younger, cheaper Jared Goff.
Yep.
So does younger, cheaper Jared Goff, if I'm right, get the Lions to the next stage of where they want to go as a franchise?
I think he's got a higher ceiling than Goff.
Okay, so
I think he's better than a younger, cheaper than Jared Goff, not necessarily year 1. So I would keep Goff this next year, let him learn behind Goff, and then for a cap penalty of basically nothing, cut Goff after this next season with CJ Stroud taking over.
Let me ask you this question. Let's say, because I don't think the Lions will go into the draft having done something like cut or traded Jared Goff.
Yeah, I don't either.
Leave them at 6, saying we have to draft our starter. Right. So if you go into the draft and you're at 6, I think you have a starting capable quarterback on the roster. So if you take a quarterback at 6, you have to sit him, right?
Yeah, you have to.
You have to sit him for a year, right?
Yeah, just like they sat Mahomes for a year.
Yes. So I do not like that narrative, but you're in that particular example, you are accurate.
Yeah.
So to me, I want to take.
To me, the biggest challenge for if I was Brad Gnomes, And I was facing this decision. The biggest challenge for me is, all right, if I take CJ Stroud at 6, what does that tell Jared Goff about his future? Is he going to want to play here?
That's his last year.
Right.
This is his last year. That's the only thing you could take away from that.
Right. And is that something I want to put on a quarterback right now?
So the other thing that I'll bring up is that, do we think this is
Stroud
Ben
is
Johnson's
Goff with legs? I like that.
But I mean, if he doesn't use them, he doesn't have them, right? So like, if this is Ben Johnson's last season with the Detroit Lions?
I think it is.
So I think
our offense was more a function of or output of Ben Johnson's genius, brilliance, than it was Jared Goff. And I think if Ben Johnson leaves, I think there's going to be a big step back.
So if we think this is Ben Johnson's last year in Detroit, why would we take the quarterback now? You bring in
because
the next
I think
guy.
He's going to be better with whoever we come back. I think Jared Goff. I think that the 72.4 that Jared Goff was this year.
No, I'm talking about Stroud.
I know, but the reason I would still do it is I think the 72.4 that Goff was this year is strictly because of what Ben Johnson did.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think he's going to be there. I think CJ Stroud can do better than that after this.
But what I'm saying is, if we think Ben Johnson, I agree with everything you just said.
Right.
But so let's play that out a year from now. Ben Johnson gets a head coaching job. Okay, Ben Johnson was the thing that was making Jared Goff this good.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want? I mean, we're only going to have $5 million if we cut Jared Goff next season, and you have $25 million in cap savings. So if you let go of Goff and Johnson, and you bring in a new OC, why would you want to have CJ Stroud on the roster when you bring that next guy in? Now aren't you pigeonholing yourself on who you can bring in as your new OC?
Not
because he has to make CJ Stroud work as opposed to
I think
any other future quarterback.
I think Stroud's just better than Goff. Like, I think he's got higher ceiling, and I think he's got a lower floor.
But he's not
a higher floor and a higher ceiling.
Right, but like he's not going to play this upcoming season. So like, and we don't know what the next OC would want from his quarterback to do. Maybe he doesn't want the things that CJ Stroud is good at. Right?
Maybe. And it's one of those things where you're like, as an offensive coordinator, a lot of times you don't get to pick the situation. You're like, hey, I want to be an OC. Who's got an OC job? Oh, you guys do? Who's your quarterback? All right, I'll see what I can do.
Right, but like if you're an OC and they have CJ Stroud on the roster, and you're like, well, that decision's been made for me. Are you looking forward as any OC candidate coming in and saying like, oh, CJ Stroud with a year of like holding a clipboard under his belt is the guy that I want to? That's attractive for me to come to Detroit.
Yeah, I don't know.
So like, to me, if it was me, we'll draft Stroud for the sake of it. But like, if it was me, I would try and trade down. Like, I would agree with what you said.
Yeah.
About like, I would rather trade down to 8 or 9. But like, if Houston was like, hey, I'll give you 12 and like a 2 and some mid-round pick, I would take that in a heartbeat. Click on it. Let's just see what happens. Okay, they said no. But like, trading in this spot is so expensive.
Yeah.
That like, I don't want to just be like, hey, Carolina, to move up 3 spots, just give us your second round pick and we'll just move down. Like, compared to other trades that have taken place in the last 5 years, you're shortchanging yourself on what you should be charging Carolina to come up, right? And so like, I don't want to skimp on the compensation, right? I'm not demanding that it be ludicrous.
So what about something like this? A first, their second, which is 33rd overall. They're 73 for our 6 and 81.
Yeah, that's fine. Try it. Fine. Okay, I just draft Devin Witherspoon here. Like I would just
over Christian Gonzalez.
I would happily skip to the I think Devin Witherspoon is going to be CB1. Do you want to have this conversation right now?
Not if we want to try to get it done in time.
Sure. Okay.
I think this is like we talked about having an episode where we talk about different trade opportunities. What would a trade up look like if we really had our heart set on Bryce Young? We traded Goff or whatever, and we really had our heart set on Bryce Young, and so we're going to trade up to 1 or trade back. And so we've got a couple different scenarios I think that would go well in that. So let's have that conversation then where we can go deeper in it because we're already 10 minutes over.
We're a little over. Okay.
Yeah.
So scroll down for me. Okay, scroll back up for me. To me, this pick is either Christian Gonzalez or Osiris Torrance. And I would just take Christian Gonzalez here. I would just go, I would double dip. We don't know about Okuda and if he's going to get a second contract. Tight end, edge, keep going. I would take Cansey.
Yeah. Defensive line, we need that.
So my prospect crush is Darnell Washington. I absolutely love this guy. He's so big. So he's just
we need a tight end.
I still I was thinking about this today because I was going over the Hawkinson trade in my head. If they're not willing, I just don't know where their line is on that position anymore. So where they were comfortable was Brock Wright, who I'm not sure if he was drafted. St. Gilstra, who I know wasn't, and then their 5th round coming off an ACL tight end. So I don't think that a 2nd round pick is where they're going to want to go. I would do it because he's half offensive lineman. But Crimson in the chat said Sanders, and I think that's an interesting pairing with Malcolm Rodriguez. Because Malcolm Rodriguez is your typical run and fill a gap chase guy, but Sanders is just a rusher and he's gigantic, and that's a guy that can catch and tackle Justin Fields by himself. He was a Bama player. He transferred to Arkansas. I do agree with what Crimson's saying in the chat. Skinner is interesting. Something happened with Skinner at the Senior Bowl. I thought that I don't know that it was a big red flag, but it was something oh, interesting. I wasn't aware of that.
All right. Well, let's go Drew Sanders because we do need help in that middle.
His great name. Big part of it.
55.
So, hear me out on this one. This is a little bit. Well, so if Jalen Hyatt's on there, I don't think Jalen Hyatt would be there at this point, but that's yet more speed. Parker Washington from Penn State just feels like a good player. And so at this point, if I'm Brad Holmes, this draft, I don't need to swing and hit a home run every pick, right?
Right.
So if I can hit a double, it was something like that, Crimson. He was either injured or he weighed 25 pounds less than what he was listed at. It was something like that. It wasn't like he got in trouble or anything. But I want to hit a double here with this pick. And I think he is that. And so will they cut Cephas? Is Chart going to be sought after on the wide receiver market? It's a bad market for wide receivers. He's coming off of a good season. Is he going to get priced out of Detroit? Do you need having another wide receiver, especially in the 2nd round, that's just a good player? That seems like a good investment.
Go wide out.
I don't mind doing it for the purposes of this mock. Oh, this is our pick from Houston. Yeah. Through Cleveland. I have no love for Sam Laporta. I would take Jordan Battle or Jair Brown. If you want to keep it in the big, okay, we'll go to SEC.
I was just clicking.
No, I hear you. We're just going to wrap this up. Oh, we traded 81, right? We traded.
Yep.
Yeah.
We basically upgraded it.
Stop it, Crimson. Don't be mean. So let's see. We got graded a B for our trade. That's fine. Witherspoon was an A. Gonzalez was an A. B+ on Clancy. Sanders was an A. Okay, B- on whatever. But overall, that's an A+ top 100 from according to PFF, right? So like we're a PFF podcast basically. But I think that if the Lions walked away, and I think the next time they pick is probably in round 5, because I think we gave up our 4th to Minnesota. Like, I think you could walk away with that top 100, being like, hey, we picked up some extra value. We addressed the biggest problem on our defense, which was corners. You know, we got a guy that can play next to Lee McNeil, at least in a rotation. And, okay, here's a good linebacker and some other, like, these are solid players at positions that we might need some depth. So, linebacker, safety, not really where I want to be investing, like, premium draft capital. But I think that there's an argument to be had for those players at those positions for this team. So I think it worked out pretty well.
Yeah. I'd take it.
So, all right, we are going to call this a show. We are live every Tuesday. We appreciate you guys joining us. If you guys have any questions or suggestions, what you want to see, talk, discuss on the show, you can email us at where, Mike?
casualgmpodcast@gmail.com.
We also have a Twitter account, Casual GM Podcast on Twitter, and we do have kind of a little bit of a special announcement. We are going to be converting our audio files from the show into a podcast. And so we will be posting those periodically, trying to catch back up to where we are now on the podcast. So if you like listen and subscribe, we will be available on Anchor, Spotify first, and then hopefully other platforms like iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Sketcher, that kind of stuff. So hopefully you guys will be able to, if you don't like looking at us, I understand it's good to look at Mike, but I'm a different breed. You know, you just want to listen to the dulcet tones of my voice.
Yeah.
We will have another platform for you. So
right on. And then we're still trying to figure out what we want to do for our 100 subscriber thing. So if you have any, I know someone came up with the idea of like a donation to a shelter or something like that.
Sure.
We could do something like that. If you have any ideas for what we could do for hitting the 100 subscriber mark, that would be great. I know Drew ordered his hat from hitting the 50.
The hat is on the way.
Coming soon.
Hopefully next week.
Right on. And I think I'm going to order that gray one because I liked it.
Well, I mean, a hat can only make you look that much better, Mike, right?
That's true. I mean, it's a little thinning, so that'll definitely help.
So I appreciate that.
Crimson said, "Drew, you're beautiful. Stop it."
He's so great. You know,
it's the beard.
I put oil in it this morning, so hopefully it's maintained its shape and luster. So
it looks fantastic. I'm jealous.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you guys. Peace.
Bye.